Madam President, I want to talk a little bit about the health care bill. Every time I'm home, I hear more and more concerns from more and more families and more individuals and more employers. In 2009, the president repeatedly said that if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. I notice nobody's saying that anymore. And maybe that's not what the measure should be, because that's certainly not going to happen. I think the question is, are you going to have health care, and can you afford it? During the presidential campaign, the president said he liked the term ObamaCare, so I feel a little more free to use that than I did previously. I don't mean it to be disparaging in any way. I just happen to think it's a plan that won't work. In the 3 years since the Affordable Health Care Act became law, it's become increasingly clear that this plan will only deliver more broken promises and bad news. Opponents have long warned that this overhaul is bad for the economy. There are now over 20,000 pages of new regulations, and I'm talking to the people I work for. They say we were concerned when people didn't read the 2,000-page bill. Now, since the election, there's been 20,000 pages of regulations. There'll be at least 159 new bureaucracies, boards, and programs. A number of recent reports have reinforced everybody's concerns, noting that the health care bill will burden Americans with $1 trillion of new taxes over 10 years and penalties. It will stifle job creation. The Investor's Business Daily noted that retailers are cutting worker hours at a rate not seen in more than 3 decades. A sudden shift, according to them, that can only be explained by the onset of Obamacare's employer mandates. That ends their quote. Only explained by the onset of Obamacare's employer mandates. In the April job figures, 288,000 people moved from full-time work to part-time work. Almost all of us in the Senate, as we talk to people in the states we represent, talk to somebody who's figuring out how they can replace full-time employees when they leave, or maybe earlier than they wanted to leave, with part-time employees. The Congressional Budget Office warned that the president's health care plan will slash approximately 800,000 jobs, increase government spending by $1.2 trillion, and force 7 million Americans to lose their employer-sponsored coverage. On that last one, I think that's optimistic. I think it'll be more than 7 million people who 2 years from now don't have health insurance, who had some kind of health insurance 2 years ago or even up till today. I think the setting the standard that you have to meet that, if you can't meet that standard, just pay the penalty and don't provide anything, is going to put people in a position that they're going to find themselves really troubled to be in. A leading healthcare advocacy group recently noted that millions of people will be priced out of the health insurance market under Obamacare thanks to a glitch in the law that hurts people with modest incomes who can't afford family coverage offered by their employers. And of course, the only thing the employer gets any credit for offering in the new world we're about to move into is individual coverage. In fact, if you have a family member that's covered in your family policy, the person they work for appears to get no credit for that coverage. An independent study by the Society of Actuaries, these are the people that try to calculate benefits and life expectancy and all of that, estimates that insurance companies will have to pay out an average of 32% more for medical claims on individual health policies by 2017. Now, why would that be? Remember, these are health policies that there's a small penalty for not having, but the insurance company has to issue to you whenever you decide you want it. I've talked to more than one hospital group that said, we'll just put the insurance forms in the ambulance. And under the law, as I read the law, you can fill out the insurance form on the way to the hospital in the ambulance, and the insurance company still has to give the so-called guaranteed issue no matter what your health is. For Missourians, this study shows that medical claim costs could increase by almost 60%. I think the exact was 58.8% per person. This actuarial study in my state says that insurance claim costs could increase by state's projected cost increase, the 8th highest in the country. At a time when millions of Americans are still searching for jobs, the last thing we should be doing is discouraging job growth, but every single person here has heard somebody that they work for in the state they represent say, we're not going to grow above 50 people, or we're not going to hire full-time employees. Next year, job creators will be forced to start complying with the law or pay a penalty. This will lead employers to reduce hours for full-time employees to avoid paying those penalties or providing health care, either one. State governments like the state of Virginia, right across the river from where we're working in the nation's capital, said that after July 1, none of their part-time employees will be allowed to work. That's the beginning of their spending year. That after July 1, none of their part-time employees will be able to work more than 29 hours. Now, why would the entire state of Virginia be saying that? Because the federal government says 30 hours is the time when you have to provide a benefit. And once we start saying as a government, you have to do something, suddenly it seems to be okay to meet the exceptions. For companies that for 5 decades after World War II have done everything they could to provide benefits for health care at whatever level they thought they could, because they thought it was either the competitive thing to do or the right thing to do or both, those same companies are now saying, well, the exception in the law says I don't really have an obligation to provide you health care, and so I'm not going to. As we see people move toward the part-time workforce, I believe we're going to see people in more than one job, but none of those jobs will have benefits. The person who serves you your breakfast or sells you your coffee in the morning may be the same person you see at a meal later that same day at another place, because they're working 2 jobs, not one, and neither of those have benefits. For those employers who decide it's cost-effective to pay the penalty rather than comply with the law, those people that work for them that warned that implementing this bill will be a huge train wreck said there is reason to be very concerned of what's going to happen to young people if their premiums shoot up, and I can tell you that is going to wash up on the United States Senate in a hurry. New York Times reported that Senator Ben Cardin told White House officials he was concerned about big rate increases being sought by insurers in his state, one of the first states to report what the new rates would be. Senator Jeanne Shaheen noted that she is, quote, hearing from a lot of small businesses in New Hampshire that do not know how to comply with the law. Senator Rockefeller said he's of the belief that the act is probably the most complex piece of legislation ever passed by the Congress. He said it, quote, it worries me because and if it isn't done right the first time, it will just simply get worse. Even the top healthcare official in the country, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, said there may be a higher cost associated with getting into this market where folks will be moving into a really fully insured product for the first time, or not. What she didn't say is or not. What she did say was this insurance may cost more than what your employer used to think they could afford to provide to you, and now maybe they're not providing anything at all, or maybe they're paying the bill thought they could afford, but what was the only option. This isn't like if you can do some of this, fine, you'll just pay part of the penalty. It's not like that at all. In fact, what this really is, if you don't meet the standards that the federal government has decided should be the standards for employees of yours that they have never seen, that you pay $100 a day if you try to offer insurance that doesn't meet the insurance per employee. That's $36,500 a year is if you don't offer the insurance exactly like the government says it has to be offered at a minimum. Now, if you decide not to offer any insurance at all, it's $2,000 a year. So now we've got to the point where the government is so right that it's a $36,500 penalty if you don't offer exactly the insurance they say you have to offer, and it's a $2,000 penalty if you don't offer any insurance at all. Now, what kind of parallel universe is this that this has taken us into, that we'd have that kind of ridiculous situation develop? Last week, President Obama said that there may be, he said, glitches and bumps in the rollout of his massive government overhaul. The Chicago Tribune, one of his hometown newspapers, after he said that, said, give us, in editorial, they said, give us the choice of train wreck, or glitches, or bumps. We're betting on train wreck. This is his paper, his hometown paper, that's saying that. Certainly not what the president and congressional leaders promised when this became the law. We can all agree that we must fix our healthcare system. I think the path we're on is the wrong path to take. There are a number of things we could do: medical liability reform, more vigorous competition, buying across state lines, more individual ownership of policies, set up high-risk pools that work. The choice should never have been you can do this or we can do nothing at all. There were things in the great healthcare system we had that could have been improved and still had the benefits of that great system. It appears that none of these are being allowed to happen until we see for sure that the new system either will work or won't work. I recently voted for the amendment to defund the program, and let's go back to the drawing board and see what we can do to get started again. I think this is a flawed concept. I think we have to replace this concept with common sense reforms that put patients and doctors in control of health care, not new bureaucracies in Washington. And I'd yield the floor.